We make it look easy, we make it look good. When everybody sees it, they stop and take a look. So celebrate yourself, celebrate. So celebrate yourself, it's gonna feel so great.
So here's some behind the scenes on these Canadian-made cane door fronted end tables. So what have I done so far? Well, I removed all of the campaign style hardware that was on them. I'll make sure to post a picture so you can see what that looked like. And I have cleaned them all with Fusion's TSP alternative in a spray bottle and wiped them down. I filled all of the hardware holes and any gouges or spots that I saw with this quick wood filler, which I love. And then I used this carbide scraper to scrape down any of the spots that needed it. Also went back with a little bit of plastic wood, sorry I didn't show you that product, to fill any last spots. I also made sure I added these pieces to the base. There's the little Made in Canada, because I want to put these really cool legs on them. So I actually had already removed the base, which you can see in the other pictures that I'll make sure that I have. And I wanted to add these legs, but there's a little bit of a lip here. So what I did is I cut some 3/4 inch MDF that I had laying around, used my jigsaw, still researching the best jigsaw blade to use, by the way. My cuts are fine for this, but don't love them. And then I actually, because this is really thin, I actually just used my 23 gauge pneumatic nail gun to install them. And luckily it did not go through too badly on the bottom. I will be able to sand that out and paint it. But because this is so thin, I'm gonna make sure that I don't rely on this for the legs. I'm gonna install them so that 3 of the screws are in this thicker wood, and then the last screw will be in there, but it'll just be a little bit more just to hold them straight and for balance. So it's now time to make what I call hardware soup. So I've taken all of the hinges and decided to actually even put the screws in from the end tables that I'm working on, and I've put a little bit of water in the pot. And then I am now adding vinegar, about the same amount as I have water, so just pure white vinegar. And then I will boil this for about 5 minutes. So here's the hardware. It's boiled for 5 minutes. I sprinkled it with this product called Barkeeper's Friend. Then I used this metal brush that I would use to clean, but also to rough up the surface, because I am actually going to be spray painting this hardware gold. So this is what it looks like, cleaned up and ready for spray paint.
Everything's now been sanded down. The top's a little bit more with 180 grit first because there was more gouges and scrapes, and you can see I went through to the raw wood in some places. Then everything was sanded with a 220, the tops again, and the insides and the sides. On the doors, you can see that those were sanded as well, but because I can't get into some of these little nooks and crannies very well with the orbital sander, same with the backs of the cabinet, which you can see, the edges and the corners. I used a hand sandpaper, 220 grit over a sanding sponge. Next up, priming.
So before putting this primer on, I had actually sprayed the cane with some clear shellac, because I wanted to make sure that it was sealed and that it would stick really well to the cane. And as you can see, I just use a foam roller to paint on my shellac primer because it's pretty messy and it's really hard to get out. And you can get it out. You mix pure ammonia with some water, about half and half, and I've done it before. But as much as I hate to say it, after I am done with the foam roller and the primer, I throw it out. I feel like I'm doing good by saving the landfills with the furniture, but I do absolutely feel guilty about throwing out some of the things that I use. Nonetheless, I hang on to it and as long as I can, and I will do all of this with it. So the only problem I find with using the foam roller to get into some of these little nooks and crannies is you can see that the roller is starting to sort of break up, which means I clearly won't be using it beyond this project. But the other thing is that it gets little bits of foam as you roll, and I always do a quick sand after I prime once it's dry, so I get them out of there. It's not a huge problem, but it is a bit of a pain. Okay, so the primer is still wet and I've done the top, and what you're seeing here where I had to sand right down to the wood, it's turning a little bit brown. That's bleed through, and that's exactly why you use primer, to stop the bleed through, but also because the paint's going to take differently in the areas that I sand down further than others. But given what I'm seeing, it's kind of hard to tell. I think you can see a little bit of brown there coming through. Oh, there's some. I'm going to do another coat. Now time to install the legs on the base. So in a previous video, I showed how I had added these pieces of MDF to make sure that I would have a flat spot to rest the legs on. And what I've done is I've positioned them all in place and marked where the screw holes need to go. I'm now going to pre-drill the holes to put the screws in. So the screws are exactly 3/4 of an inch, which is fine because when you put them in, they won't go 3/4 of an inch through all the way to the bottom, so that'll be fine. And you want to make sure that when you're pre-drilling, your drill bit is smaller than your screw bit in. And it is now time to drill in my pre-marked spots. Remember, I don't want to go more than 3/4 of an inch in. I could mark the drill bit, but what I'm going to do is just eyeball it and hope that I don't go too far. One leg done. Only 7 more to go. So Fusion Mineral Paint doesn't actually require a top coat. However, these are nightstands, and so I just wanted to give the top a little bit of extra protection. So what I've done is I've mixed some of the Chateau with this diamond wood finish top coat that I use in satin, and as you can see, I've mixed it all up, and I'm using my favorite applicator sponge to put it onto the tops, just the tops of the end tables. And I just sort of roll it, move it back and forth. Okay, I have added the paint mixed with the diamond finish Varathane to the tops. Never mixed in quite this much paint before, so fingers crossed it does not look streaky.
I use this peel and stick wallpaper using my rotary cutter and Olfa mat, and then I just put it on the insides of the doors where the cane is.
So I would say probably at least once every other project, I start drilling the hardware in the wrong spot. And now I have to fill it and sand it and paint it before I can re-drill in the right spot.
Let's take one last look at these end tables before. Old, outdated, and mismatched hardware, beautiful cane door fronts, and a wooden base on the bottom. And let's see what they look like now. Completely refreshed, completely modernized, new legs, new hardware, full coat of paint, and they are now done and ready to go home to be nightstands matching a display cabinet in the same color.